Wave.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time, a Wave original. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. It is Time Machine Tuesday, coming to us live from Oakland, California, and the Ranger. Well, Oakland enough. He from Oakland. Oakland come with him everywhere he go. Check out the real ones. Logan Murdock, what's going on?
Man, I'm just slow motion with the potion trying to get to the ocean, Bo. You know how I go. You know the vibes. We miss you out here, man. You need to come through. You need to, take you a flight out to the Bay, man.
Dude, I need to. I haven't been to the Bay since 2009. It's been that long.
That is a damn shame. I when you come to the Bay, I am picking you up from the airport, and we are going to drive around Lake Mary for about 15 minutes.
Yo, Lake Mary changed my whole idea of the Bay. Like when I got there, and the first thing Lil Mama did, we went ahead, we had lunch in San Francisco, because I flew into SFO. We had lunch in San Francisco, and she pulled up, she lived over by the lake, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know y'all had one of these. You know what I'm saying? And the weather was right, and I was like, oh.
In the middle, I get my hair cut on a, I'll just say it, I get my hair cut on 14th and Oak. And every time I drive back home, I make sure I get a little bit of the lake on the way there, man. I play Picture Me Rolling. I play Checkout Time. I just get in the zone. I probably called you a couple of times during that drive, but, just...
It's appreciated, man. We got you here talking about something from the Bay. It's Time Machine Tuesday. And we're talking about the 2016 Golden State Warriors 10 years ago. Now, I need to let people know we're basically doing like a series over the next few weeks on the Warriors because we got like 3 different things to talk about involving this run of the Warriors. Logan was around that team, working with the Mercury News.
I was working at KMBR Radio. I had a little bit of internships just around there. I was around college around that time, and then I got to the Mercury News.
Yeah, you were around this team, and look, man, just growing up in Oakland, like the Warriors. Even when the Warriors were sorry, the Warriors were a thing, right? Like the Warriors.
Absolutely, man. It was.
That's
funny
the most amazing thing is how much Warriors fans cared about the Warriors in spite of the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, they were just kind of omnipresent, and they was just rich dudes in downtown. Like you would hear about, Steven Jackson being at the Louisiana Fish Market, down the street from my house, or you hear about a such and such player that's 7 feet tall getting robbed, or you would hear, or you would see, like the We Believe Warriors I always talk about are the last like Oakland Warriors team, right, where their community events were going to Eastmont Mall and going to the McDonald's there and passing out Big Macs to fans, right? And that will never happen now. That's not going to happen. It was just a different time. But,
also, it was a very particular collection of dudes that fit the idea of playing in Oakland. So that's Baron Davis, that's Steven Jackson, that's Matt Barnes, that's Al Harrington.
Monte Ellis.
Oh, Monte was on that team.
Yep.
Jason Richardson.
Then you have Don Nelson, who loved to play shuffleboard over there by the Grand Lake Theater, and that would be his initiation for the team, which is like, let's get drunk and let's go play shuffleboard.
But like that squad, like I feel like for somebody my age, there's like 3 distinct periods of Warriors basketball. It's really kind of 4, right? It is the Run TMC era, like the first Don Nelson era, where they just, hey man, just kind of having a good time. Looking back on it, a little bit ahead of where the game was going. Had that one year, I think they beat the Spurs in the first round, where they were the 7th seed and the Spurs were the 2 seeds. So you got Chris Mullin, Mitch Richmond, Tim Hardaway. Like it was a fun squad. Honorable mention only because of that one thing that happened when Sprewell choked out PJ Carlesimo. Like that whole team wasn't really an era. It was the end of Run TMC and.
Hey, don't forget the teams before me and you both were born, or in the 70s, where they did win some championships. And then
where you had a coach that was ready to fight everybody.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Your coach's nickname is the Destroyer. That's the greatest nickname. Al Attles, the Destroyer, is rest in peace, Al Attles, a Bay Area legend. Y'all love that man.
Love him. Every time when my first couple of years covering the team on full time, Al Attles would actually sit next to the press area. So you would see him every time. He had his own seat above one of the tunnels, and everybody would, kind of get some wisdom from him. The security people knew who he was. He was always a G with it.
Yeah. But then you had the We Believe Warriors. And then The Mark Jackson Warriors, I think, are important to talk about in this because the Warriors have been so bad for so long, missed the playoffs. I forget how many straight years, how many years out of how many, because they made the playoffs that year in 2007, obviously. But wrapping around that, it wasn't no playoffs, man. Christmas missed us over and over again for what was going on there. Mark Jackson got there, and that team got better than, honestly, most people expected it to get at any point. Like the early Mark Jackson days, I think it's easy to forget now. This was like, hey, get a load of the Warriors. Look at them being good.
Yeah, I mean, well, so Mark Jackson, if I'm correct, he got hired in 2011 because he replaced Keith Smart, who replaced Don Nelson. And as this is going on, you have Steph, who gets drafted in 2009, and then you get Klay Thompson, who is drafted a couple of years later, and then you have the defining draft of the Golden State Warriors in 2012, where you get Harrison Barnes, you get Festus Ezeli, and you get Draymond Green, right? So all of this is happening under the eyes of Mark Jackson, who kind of just like sees the talent on this and says, okay, I'm going to make them believe that they can be, better than they think they can be, right? Steph's coming off the ankle injuries and they're kind of trying to find themselves. And early on, Mark Jackson would just say these things where it's like, are you sure? Like he would say like Steph and Klay are the best backcourt of all time, right? Before that they've actually have done real damage in the playoffs, right? But you're starting to see little itty bitty things, right? You're starting to see, and as that's happening, the team is starting to get built. Andrew Bogut gets traded for. They trade Monte Ellis, who was a real pillar in the community, and had gotten into some trouble that you guys can go Google. But he gets traded for Andrew Bogut, and then Andre Iguodala, and after 2013 signs with the team, and you're starting to see this championship roster kind of come into fold. And in a lot of ways, Mark Jackson was the coach that helped not only galvanize this team, but show them they can get to the postseason. And what you see from a lot of coaches are, teams go in steps, right? Different coaches are needed for different types of teams. And Mark Jackson was needed for the type of team that needed to figure themselves out, but also know that they can go onto the big stage. Now, was he the coach necessarily to, once they get to the big stage, get them to winning and being contender status? One will never know, but the jury is probably not. And that's how you get to Steve Kerr. But Mark Jackson was a pivotal point. And if you ask anybody within the Warriors organization, at least the players, the organization, the front office didn't like him. But you talk to Draymond, you talk to Klay, you talk to anybody is a foundational player, they will go back and say, we're not here without Mark Jackson.
So I think the part that Mark doesn't get enough credit for, because the primary criticism of him when he coached the Warriors, aside from some of the way that he brought his Jesus with him to work, was that his offense was a bit antiquated, right? Like a lot of mid-post work for Harrison Barnes and all that. But I think this is where he deserves some credit. Number one, he called it as soon as he got that job. He said he had the best shooting backcourt in the history of the NBA. And we thought that was hyperbole, and none of us can come up with the number two answer at this point. Like we would all agree that the Splash Brothers didn't have a name yet. But before Mark Jackson got there, I think he gets credit there. Number two, and I think is important, his first year coaching them, Steph, that was the year Steph was hurt. Steph only played 28 minutes a game, but he shot 4.7 threes per game. That second year with Mark Jackson, he shot 7.7 threes per game. The next year, 7.9. Those numbers are dwarfed a bit by where they ultimately became, but that was the beginning of expanding the paradigm of how much people shot threes. Curry just took it crazy, right? Like when we get to 2016, now he's taking 11 threes a game, right? Like now we're at something else, but it's easy to forget that Steph Curry was leading the league in three-pointers attempted before that, right? Mark Jackson made the decision that, hey, we got a guy that is a superstar caliber player, makes second team All-NBA in Mark's last year there, right? The thing that happened that last year, though, I don't know exactly what happened. Joe Lacob hated his guts. And I didn't have to be around the team to see that. I just had to watch games and see Joe Lacob sitting courtside, and he hated Mark Jackson so much that he would just shake his head at him. Mark Jackson also had that. But Mark Jackson also had that wild shit where what Darren Erman was working as a spy and recording stuff and taking it back to other people, and then Mark Jackson had to fire. I mean, it was chaos around him. Like the reason Mark Jackson does not have another job is that stuff, right? Like he was a pretty good basketball coach who existed in a world of paranoid chaos, but also made that basketball team better.
Yeah, there was that. There was like an extortion too. There was this.
Yes,
There's a funny
ass man of God.
Yeah, there was a funny story. Speaking of being man of God, of like where I think it was one of the Clippers series. I think it was the Clippers series, but they were in LA. Let's just say they were in LA. And Mark Jackson brought the whole team to his church. And there's a famous story where Hilton Armstrong gets saved. And he is, I don't want to say necessarily like hallucinating, but like, everybody who's been to a black church know what we're talking about. But he was in the parking lot just basically with Jesus in his soul and basically like sprouting out hymns. And that was one of that's the famous story that gets told about a lot in the bowels of both Oracle and Chase Center to this day. So I mean, there was a lot of he got them. Let's say Mark Jackson got them to a point, but at a certain point, it would be like at what cost? And they had to get somebody in there. The Warriors did, who can kind of like professionalize it a little bit, and that's where we get to Steve Kerr.
Yeah, let us not forget. In the season of chaos for the Los Angeles Clippers in 2014, when they won that first round series in a Game 7, that was the last game that Mark Jackson coached.
Yeah,
right, where the Clippers are going out, where inside out warm ups and everything else, and all that went down
in the wake of the Donald Sterling tapes, the TMZ Donald Sterling tapes.
Yes, all of that stuff. That was the last game Mark Jackson coached. And when they hired Steve Kerr, I think it's easy to forget that it did not look good, right? Steve Kerr had been doing TV at the time, and my humble opinion, wasn't very good at it, all right? Joe Lacob was asked why he hired Steve Kerr or how he got to know Steve Kerr, and he said he got to know him while playing golf. So this black man who had just got your team up to 50 wins, a team whose best player at the time was Stephen Curry in the way that we viewed Stephen Curry at the time, right? You're telling us that these Warriors, who have been terrible for the better part of 2 decades, you are saying the coach that got them to 50 wins and after 3 years consistently won more games, you're telling us that this team isn't good enough? And you not only need a new coach, you need a new coach that's never coached before. And by the way, that you're paying $5 million a year to take the job. And that was so controversial that the Knicks hired Derek Fisher to coach them. And they had to give him $5 million a year.
Yep. By the way, I would like to add to that too, right? Because there are a few things. Also, Steve Kerr, failed general manager at the time of the Phoenix Suns. His crowning achievement, I wouldn't even call it achievement, his crowning moment as the Phoenix Suns GM was trading for Shaq when the game was going completely the other way. A deal he regrets. And then also, this team, the Golden State Warriors, were about a month removed from considering to strike because of the Donald Sterling racism, right? Yes. And you see that. And also, by the way, this is the locker room. Forget what the front office thinks. The locker room loved Mark Jackson. Like, they loved who he was and they loved what he had done for them. And kind of had furrowed brows after he got let go, even though the writing was kind of on the wall that he was going to be let go just like weeks before. And then you put in Steve Kerr, who is not proven as a coach whatsoever, and then has everything that you have just described, and he's already been a failed general manager, right? And so it was a lot of things that were going against Steve at the time. We did not see what we're about to talk about on the horizon at all.
Yeah, it was. I was one of the many people that was like, come on.
And one other thing, it looked like the team had hit a ceiling with Mark Jackson. And not necessarily, we didn't think it was Mark Jackson's fault, but it seemed like, okay, this was a fun team, right? They got to the second round in 2013, and then they lost in the first round in 2014. We're like, is this just what the team is? Like, is this going to be a fun, exciting team that just loses in the first round? That was kind of what we thought this was going to be.
Like Don Nelson, basically, right? But there was nothing in NBA history to indicate a team that was constructed as that team was constructed was anything more than a fun team that was going to lose early. And they bring Kerr in, and Kerr's there And I think the most interesting thing that happens with this team, David Lee gets hurt. And look, David Lee had been an NBA All-Star. It's kind of interesting to think about what they would have been with David Lee because of his skills, right? His ability to shoot and everything else. But they put Draymond Green in as a starter, something that an idea that no one had entertained up until that point, right? Like he was an excellent college player and an excellent college player in the mold of guys that you call excellent college players, right? Maybe, let's see, maybe this will be something. And they jumped out in 2014, 2015 on fire.
On fire. Like, I just want to take a moment to just talk about Draymond Green for a second, right? Like, he has the career at Michigan State. Under Mark Jackson, he's kind of henpecked because of the David Lee stuff. He's kind of just basically like, we're just going to you're a great defender. We're going to put you on Kobe. We're going to put you on LeBron. And that's kind of just what you are, right? And then something happens. He has a couple big games in the 13 playoffs, but in the 14 playoffs, he really kind of builds confidence in himself. Not to say he lacked confidence, because, Bo, this is a guy that told his veteran, Jeremy Tyler, that I am no longer your rook. You are not worthy enough to beat my veteran. That's what he says when he gets drafted. So he's a different kind of dude. But during that Clippers series, he kind of finds himself, and he tells this famous story about how he told his shoe rep, Adrian Staley, like, they don't know what they got. They don't know what they got. And there's all of this pent up anger because, he, from a child in Michigan, when, he's at the rec center and people are telling him he can't be on the floor. He has to earn his way onto the floor at the rec center in Saginaw. Then, he has the Michigan State career. But then, even Steph had some who is this dude energy towards Draymond when he gets into the locker room. And then he has to prove himself all over again. And then when he's about to get his new deal or try to fight for a new deal, he has a new coach. So he has a huge monumental chip on his shoulder going into this 14-15 season that kind of manifests as David Lee is hurt, and he kind of goes into the fold.
They started the season 21-2. 21-2, and I'm looking at it right now. These games wasn't really that close.
No.
Everything is like, what is going on? And do not forget what the big story was going into that season. LeBron went back to Cleveland, and then they went and got Kevin Love. Yeah. The story was supposed to be LeBron took the show from Miami, got to Cleveland. They immediately got their own big three situation. Everything that was supposed to matter with that team. And suddenly it was all about the Warriors. What we thought LeBron in Cleveland was going to be never really happened. And it was, and look, those teams went to the finals 4 times. They won a championship. We'll talk about, at another point. But this was not supposed to be about the Warriors. It very rarely in the NBA does a dynasty emerge from nowhere. Yeah. This one felt like it was from nowhere. And it was because there was an entire shifting paradigm of how to play basketball. Steve Kerr, Mike D'Antoni got in the Hall of Fame for the influence of the 7 seconds or less era. Steve Kerr took that and went to a whole nother place, and I think changed basketball even more.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I'm going to make a Bomani type of comparison where I go all the way this way and then come back to the point. But I think one of the people that I'm listening to right now, and somebody I've been trying to get you to listen to for a long time, is Larry June. And the reason why I like Larry June is because he's an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different types of rappers that we love. Right? He sounds like Mac Dre one day. He sounds like Warren G one day. He has a little short in him, has a little jacket in him, has a little 40 in him, has a little short in him, right? And I think about that with Steve Kerr, right, where he has a little bit of Greg Popovich in him, right? He has a little bit of Phil Jackson in him, has D'Antoni in him, has all of these little bits of influences in him that one of the things that he says that he did going into this 14-15 season was he just studied every type of coach in all of their sets. He studied Brad Stevens's after timeout sets. He studied the philosophy of Phil Jackson and how he can update some of the intricacies of the triangle offense. He learned a lot from Pop, and he kind of brought that into this type of free-flowing team. And also, if you go look back, it's so funny to look back at the commentary of that that 14-15 team because nobody really knew how to talk about them because we had never seen it before, right? It's a team centered around a small guard who doesn't really have a traditional big. They did in Bogut, but like he wasn't the guy, the actual guy, right? This is a time when Dwight Howard is coming into the fold, and that's like a pendulum swing when he goes from the Lakers to the Rockets, right? And so we don't really know how to talk about this team. Yeah, they're winning, but yeah, Chuck is saying they can't win because they're a jump shooting team, which completely misses the point of what this team was. They get a lot of shit for just being a shooting team, but the real thing that they were great at was just being a versatile team. You know, they could play as they had the death lineup, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, but they could play Draymond Green at the 5, or they could, if you have a big team, they could play Bogut at the 5, or that they were just so interchangeable defensively. And, that really came into play. And to your point though, before you get to your next question, wasn't just the Cavs that, we thought were going to be something. The Spurs were really good that season.
Well, the 2014 Spurs are one of the greatest teams of all time.
And they're going into the next season. So like you're thinking about the Spurs are trying to win a championship this year. If you look at even the predictions, I think Ethan Strauss was the only person that said the Warriors had a chance to win the title. And even then we were like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
But it was the Spurs, it was the Cavs, the Thunder were in that mix.
Right.
Perpetually, right?
That's right. They had gone to the West Finals, and this is before Durant broke his foot. Because he wound up breaking his foot that year.
It's the combination of we've never seen this before, and also we're upending a lot of people's plans who have plans to win a championship for these next few years, and also individual legacies, because you talk about LeBron, but we're also talking about Russell Westbrook, who's this dude?
Yeah.
Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, James Harden, a whole generation of players who have plans to be in the finals year in, year out. All their plans is all fucked up.
Yeah. And they ran through the league. They won that championship. But the championship, they kept running up against teams whose point guards were hurt, right? Like there was a couple down 2-1 situations. They were down 2-1 to Memphis in the Western Conference Finals. They were down 2-1 to the Cavs in the NBA Finals. They won it, but they won it in a way where Andre Iguodala wound up being Finals MVP because we saw Delly get his Steph shit for a little while. We were like, we can't reward that sort of behavior.
By the way, missed the Clippers and the Spurs on that bracket too.
They did. Yep. They did. Like the issue was confirmation bias, right? Like it was a team that we had all kinds of reason to be skeptical of because jump shooting teams don't win championships. The part that we ignored about the Warriors was we think of them as being a team that played small, but they're not small. Draymond Green was the only guy that was undersized for his position. But Steph Curry, this is not the Steph Curry of 2008. Steph Curry had legitimate size as a point guard. Klay Thompson is a big 2 guard. Harrison Barnes, a big 3. Andre Iguodala, a big 3. Andrew Bogut, a legitimate size center. Festus Ezeli coming off the bench. Like they had big guys. David Lee, when he does come back and gets a run. They had big players for their positions. They just played what we viewed as being small ball, but it became important because they could play defensive, because Draymond Green had the long enough arms and could guard all the players, like Shawn Marion, for example, with those Suns. That's what allows you to play that sort of game. So they win a championship. We come back in 2016. Steve Kerr has got a fucked up back, right? He cannot. I had forgotten that until right now. Steve Kerr does not coach to start the year because his back is hurt, and so they make Luke Walton the coach. Except they didn't really make Luke Walton the coach. Luke Walton wore the suit. Draymond Green assigned himself to be the coach. One thing Draymond Green said that would happen when he was the coach was he was going to shoot a lot more threes, and he did. And by the way, he made a lot of them, and they took off on the entire league. This was. If you were skeptical before, they were going to shoot you completely out of it. And Steph Curry was as dominant a scorer, it felt like, as we had seen, especially for somebody his size with his style of game. Like he's the greatest player ever who didn't live at the line. He's just making shots, just precise.
Very rarely do you see a team who won a championship have the chip on their shoulder the way that that Golden State Warriors team did, right? Because one thing you were talking about, we were just talking about the playoffs in the 14-15 season where they missed the one side of the bracket that everybody deemed was tough. But also the Cavs were playing without Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving in that finals for the most of that final series in 15, right? So everybody just said, oh, you guys beat LeBron, but then that's cool. But you guys, you beat a very hobbled Cavs team, and you still could have lost that series because you guys were down 2-1. And so they're bringing all of that slights and energy and all those things into that following season. And also, they're just so fucking good, right? Like they're just really good. And there were so many signature games that I'm sure we're going to get to within that regular season. But I just remember one of the games that really sticks out to me is the game against Boston. It was an early season game. It was when they got their 23rd win in a row to start the season. And
say that again. Hold on, say that again, because I feel like we're moving past that point a little fast.
It was their 23rd.
They started the season 23. No, excuse me, 24 and 0.
They were going into Boston, winning 23 straight games to start the season. And they go into overtime. And that was one of Draymond's early signature games. And it was every bit of Draymond, because people forget. And I know Draymond gets a lot of shit for his offensive or lack of offensive prowess over the last few years, but like he was genuinely a pretty good offensive player, right?
Oh, that year, that was not a complaint. When Draymond Green is the coach, the offense came around. Yeah.
And like, we'll get to it. I mean, you'll get to it in the finals when we talk about his performance then, but like he gave you every single thing that you could want, right? Like he basically took over the game, and they had dudes. He took over that game. They went into double overtime. He helps win the game for them. And you could see his force of will kind of come into focus. And what happens is, as Draymond, as the game starts to happen, Draymond is pushing them. We got to go for this record. We got to go for this record. We got to go for this record. And because Luke Walton is a substitute teacher throughout the first part of that season, they're able to they're able to do whatever they want. And fortunately, they have guys that can kind of regulate to a certain extent. They have Andre Iguodala, they have Sean Livingston, they have a very veteran core, but it comes to a head when Steve comes back, and Steve's like, "No, actually, I don't want you to shoot that many threes, Draymond." And Draymond's like, "Yo, what are you talking about?" And it kind of comes to a head in that February matchup against OKC, which was a wild game.
So that was the one I was going to talk about. It for people who don't remember this, they're losing at halftime. I forget what the score was at halftime, but the Warriors were losing at halftime. And Steve Kerr is back now. He has come back from the back injury. And by the way, it is kind of crazy that 10 years later, he's still coaching, because he was in that kind of pain from back surgery that makes guy like, I had a buddy of mine who was talking to me about this. I forget who we were talking about recently that had something come up. And it's just like, no matter what somebody says they did to avoid back pain after they've had it, I will understand it. Right. Like, and that's where Kerr was. He was physically decimated. But once Kerr was the coach, Draymond wasn't the coach anymore. And halftime of that Warriors game, of that Warriors Thunder game in Oklahoma City, Lisa Salters comes on TV to report that they could hear Draymond screaming in the hallway, "I am not a robot." That was the part that I will always remember, was the "I am not a robot" line, which is basically Steve Curry told him that he shouldn't be shooting that much. And he didn't see why he shouldn't be shooting that much. But it seemed like they were collapsing, right? Just under the weight of the withering personality of Draymond Green. And then they came back. Was a big shot Steph hit at the end of regulation before they won it in overtime?
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of things that happened. I want to go back to the halftime part, because I remember watching this. I remember being in Emeryville watching this on television, and I remember being scared because Draymond Green being a black man, and the police in Oklahoma City talking about how they might have to go up in that locker room and break up that fight. I remember thinking about that, right? And then they're down 11, and then they just start going on a run, right? And there's like there was a play where, by the way, I want to go back again, because we have to contextualize this Oklahoma City Warriors rivalry going into it, because there's so many things that are kind of convoluting going into this game. The Warriors were so good that year, but it was one of those things, whenever they played OKC, it was like, oh shit, OKC might be a problem for us going into the postseason if we ever play them again, because they play us so well, and they match up so well with us, because they have the same length as us, because they have Kevin Durant, and they have Russell Westbrook. They have all of this athleticism and defensive prowess. But what you started to see, the Warriors make a run, and you just see just grave mistakes by Oklahoma City down the stretch of that game, because no matter what was going on behind the scenes, Oklahoma City had very much control of it. And there's a couple of plays where like Kevin Durant throws some just wild passes, and then you see the worst of Russell Westbrook that kind of previews what we see in the Western Conference Finals. But then There's this weird thing where Draymond plays fucking awesome in that second half, even after he yells at his coach, and then there's the 3-pointer that happens by Steph, and then the Mike Breen moment, and then there's some sort of vindication, but we still got to figure this out. But this argument that happened beforehand, and it starts. There's a complaint that happens after. This is like when Kevin leaves. Kevin Durant comes to the Warriors and he leaves. But the complaint when he leaves is the Warriors sweep too many things under the rug. And that is a problem. And you start to see that with Draymond, like the antics that happen, the Warriors continue to sweep that under the rug because they're starting to win more and more. And when you're winning, the Draymond antics don't really matter. But when you start losing, that's when you have the biggest spotlight on you. And all of that kind of came together. It was the first time it really came together on a big, monumental type of television game. And that's another thing that's so fascinating about this team is, yeah, they won, but we really just don't have soap operas like that on NBA teams right now. And that was like the beginning of the soap opera. And it was like wall to wall. This is when they become I think 14-15 is when they open the door of the zeitgeist. But then I think this team is when they kind of just take full step into they were the top story in sports, which is hard for a basketball team to be and an NBA team to be, especially when they're competing against the NFL and other things like that. But this was when the Warriors became the it team and what we need to talk about every day.
All right. Now coming up next, we're going to stick with that point, also get to the playoffs with this team. You can predict the playoff action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. All you have to do is sign up to get your $25 bonus. Follow all the playoff dishes, swishes, wishes, and misses. Every move is a potential plot twist. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Where one run, one rebound, one shot changes everything. From opening tip to the final buzzer, stay locked in with every pass, every play, and every moment that moves us closer to crowning a champion. Sign up now for your $25 bonus on FanDuel Predicts. Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commissions merchant. 18 plus. Bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with our consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus offer terms.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Market, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18 plus, one per user. Minimum $10 deposit required. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with our consumer protection tools.
Hey, let's be honest. At a certain age, our bodies don't feel like they used to. Now, here's what I learned. Your body makes testosterone, but a lot of it gets locked up and can't be used. There's this protein called SHBG that basically handcuffs your testosterone. Even if your body's making testosterone, SHBG locks it up so you can't access it. It's like having money in the bank, but your debit card doesn't work. Mars Men is designed to free lock testosterone so your body can actually use it. With 8 natural, clinically dosed ingredients, Mars Men supports healthy T levels, energy, and stamina. 90-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. Worst case, you don't absolutely love it and you get your money back, but over 91% of users report higher energy levels. Thousands of guys are feeling incredible results. Just check out the reviews on the website to see for yourself. For a limited time, our listeners can get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. That's mengotomars.com for 50% off and 3 free gifts when you check out. And it's also available on Amazon. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. All right, we are back with Logan Murdock, and that is a very good point that you just made right on the front side of the break. I think is important is that at that point, they were the number one story in sports. Now, I would disagree that didn't happen because the previous 4 years, LeBron James and the Heat had been that, right? Like it was, it led to a natural transition because we were preparing to do it again for LeBron, but then we wound up with this bigger story that became the Warriors, and then they won the championship. And then Steph was unlike anything that we had ever seen, right? Like, I think we have talked about a lot of things, but I want to make sure to stop in this moment and just appreciate one thing that's important to note. And I talked about this earlier. Started shooting a lot more threes. Like, at this point, he's shooting 11 3-pointers a game. Nobody's done that in the NBA at that point. 11 3-pointers, and he's making, hold on, let me make sure, 45% of them, while making 56% of his twos and making 90% of his free throws. And for the first time in about a decade, we are legitimately considering the possibility that somebody's a better basketball player than LeBron James.
I'm looking at his stats with you right now on Basketball Reference, and I'm continuing to be floored on this. Right? Like he's averaging. He's unanimous MVP for a reason. He's averaging 30 a game, 40, like 55%. Or 50% from field goal range. This is just raw numbers. And then 45% from 3-point range. That's insane. Whilst taking 11 threes a game. That's crazy work. Right.
And leading the league in steals.
I mean, yeah, say that to people who say Steph can't play defense, which, I mean, he's a below average defender, but that's good for him. But anyways, him coming into the fold, and again, it goes back to, we didn't know how to talk about Steph in that way. And when you look, I was looking at highlights trying to prepare for this. And when you look at the teams that they're playing, I just put on like a mixtape from a highlight mixtape from that year. It's weird to see the Warriors play the style they're playing because it's literally the norm now. But the other rosters that they're playing against have nothing for this team because they just simply don't have the personnel, right? I saw if you look at the home opener of that season, when they're getting their rings, they're playing against the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Pelicans are trotting out Kendrick Perkins for pick and rolls against Steph, and it's just very disrespectful. And I love Kendrick Perkins, but they just simply don't have the personnel to fuck with Steph, and by extension the rest of this team, because there's so many people that can get their own shot. We didn't even talk about Harrison Barnes who can get his own shot, Andre Iguodala who can get his own shot, and then you put the greatest shooter of all time to close the game out. It's really crazy. And then also, like, I want to get on Steph and LeBron for this thing, because what we fail to realize is LeBron was like Steph's big homie for a while, right? And then, like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've definitely experienced this, where the big homie is no longer the big homie anymore, and I'm like on same playing field as the big homie, and the adjustment that goes with that. Like, they're buddy now, LeBron and Steph, but there was a real angst and animus to them. I don't care what they say. There was a bit of like, nah, bro, this is my show. And then LeBron, what we talked about earlier, is like, no, wait, this was supposed to be for me. You're fucking up my Disney moment right now. What are we doing? What's going on? And you could kind of see that tension in 14-15, but it really, because we haven't talked about the Cavs, but the Cavs were really good that season. And
it was a weird season in 14-15 because that was the David Blatt season.
That was a David Blatt season, but they got their shit together, and then
they did.
They were really good, and the Spurs are really good, but the Warriors 73-9 kind of erases all of that. But you kind of see that tension throughout the entire season between both of those guys. Yeah.
No, man, you're right. It really came to pass. We'll talk more in the finals is when you really got to see it in the 2016 finals, that it was like, I thought it was different, right? Like, Steph is very interesting because we think of Steph as like, you know, that babyface assassin thing. The assassin thing matters, right? Steph a killer, and we treat him like he a child very often.
You know, it's funny.
Right?
There's a thing that 50 Cent always talks about when he talks about Kendrick Lamar, and when he talks about Kendrick, Kendrick tries to, he tells a story about how Kendrick just likes to act like, oh, like, yeah, man, I'm just so humble. This is so cool that I'm here and stuff. And 50 talks about this time where he says, like, he looks at him and he's like, you know what you're doing, right? And there's this like this sly smile from Kendrick of like, what do you mean? Steph is a bit the same way, right? Where he kind of projects this like, yeah, like I'm happy to be here. You know, he says all of the right things, but then when you get him in some private moments, right? Like there's the whisper of like, yeah, I know what's going on and I want to kill everybody. Right? Like you can kind of see that when you're around him more so now he's kind of brought it out of him. But in 15-16, you didn't really see it. You didn't see like the sly, like it was more smile and dancing, but it was in him.
No, the big thing is basically the big homie looked up, and it's not even simply that he realized the little homie wasn't the little homie no more. It's that he looked up and he realized that the little homie thought he was the big homie now. right? Like I think that what people misunderstand about Steph is, regardless of how good you think Steph is, I assure you, Steph Curry thinks he's better. And I believe this because at every turn of his basketball playing career, we've all been like, wow, he's really good. Yeah, but right. And he's been like, nah, like we're like, wow, Steph Curry became maybe the best player in the NBA. Didn't see that coming. Guess who did? Right? Like guess who
look at who he was playing against,
way.
right? Look, even the Western Conference and the people that we was talking about, right? Even all the players that are compared to him, who he's beaten: Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, all of his peers he is beaten.
Yeah. Like Anthony Edwards is on a very similar trajectory, but doesn't have the pelts on it yet. But like I'm saying with Steph, before he even had done that, I assure you, he is not surprised at where any of this has gone. But as that year goes, I mean, look, man, they run through the rest of the league. Never forget that they were a big enough deal that when it was time for them to go for their 73rd win to set the record for regular season wins, Kobe's playing his last game was relegated to ESPN2. He scored those 60 points on ESPN2 because the Warriors getting 73 was on ESPN because that was what level of phenomenon this team was. And so something I talked about with Caitlin Clark that I think was interesting in terms of like evaluating how she got to be as big as she had at the time was that finally women's basketball, what women's basketball didn't have or never has had is like a high flyer, right? It's not that type of game, but the high flyers back in the day were the ones that got all the attention and got the people out of their seats. And this day and age, it's not the high flyers, it's the three-point shooters. And Steph Curry is the one who changed the paradigm about what became must-see entertainment in basketball. These Warriors changed that paradigm of what became must-see entertainment in basketball. And it was watching them shoot threes, which again ran counter to everything we believe was necessary for you to be able to do in order to win in the NBA. But it wasn't just that it was Steph. It's Steph with Klay Thompson. So you got these two dudes who are shooting over 40% from three, and a paradigm shift created by Kerr in understanding that it's okay to shoot more of these threes, right? Like we're now so far removed from Larry Bird thinking that three-point shots were beneath him, right? These guys are trying to put up as many, right? These are like, I don't even need that, right? Like they think about what Larry Bird would have been in the way we talked about him if the paradigm had adjusted in that time, right?
Yeah.
Kerr took it there. Curry and Thompson took it there. So now they're shooting a zillion threes, and you have games where they're down by 15 at the half. And what they became is the best third quarter team I feel like I had ever seen, in part because they could roll out what our man Vinny Goodwill named, and I wish he could have trademarked it, the death lineup. And the death lineup is when they put Draymond at center, Iguodala, Harrison Barnes, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry, and they could only run it for about 10 minutes a game because it was too small, right?
Yeah.
But I would find that would be the winning margin in a lot of games, especially when they got to the playoffs, is that you could think that you could hold even or even take a 10-point lead on them in those other minutes. And then it's all going to fall apart when they put in this lineup.
It would be especially in the playoffs, right? Like you would go get media meals. You get media meals, you probably come out like, maybe 2 minutes into the third quarter, right? And I think when that death lineup came out, we would make sure that we were all out by that 12-minute mark so we could see what was going on. And especially at Oracle in a building like that where we would always call it, there would be the Steph roar, there would be the Klay roar, and there would just be the Warriors roar. But like what it would do to that building was just, you would felt like it would, because it was an old building. I think it was made in 1968. And you thought that the walls were going to come in, right? And that was one element of it. The other element of it was, again, to the commentary, we didn't know how to talk about it. We didn't know what we were seeing in real time, and that led to the excitement even more. And I think this was the first Twitter team where you were like, okay, I'm on Twitter. Wait, I got to watch this team now. Twitter is telling you that you need to get in front of I think Wemby has a similar phenomenon when Wemby is cooking now, but it's not like that, where you had to be in front of a television to see what was going on, because there was a game, and there's so many moments where this happened, right? I think about I think it was game 3 or 4 of the 15 first round, where they're down in New Orleans and out of nowhere, they just go on a run and they tie the game up. And it was a crazy 3 from Steph. And you would just continually see these types of games, and no lead was safe. And I think the third quarter would put the fear of God in other teams because you didn't know who was going to go off. You didn't know if Klay was just going to go on a crazy rampage. You didn't know if it was going to be Steph. You didn't know if it was just going to be the defense that was just going to parlay into a run. It was a fun thing to watch, and I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon.
And look, they get to the playoffs and they beat Houston 4-1 in the first round. But the issue in the first round is that Steph hurts. It was the MCL was the injury.
Yeah, he slipped. He slipped on a.
We see him hurt to close out that series. He is hurt. Yeah, and he was hurt to begin the series against Portland. But I think a thing that gets forgotten about this squad, they was rolling without him. Like, I don't think they would have been able to win a championship without him, but they were still rolling without him.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, if you look back, Sean Livingston was really good in stabilizing that team when Steph was out, right? And you could definitely, and he really was able to galvanize that team around them. It was just a different style of play that they had to play. They had to play more methodical play, less chaotic. Draymond had to have a little bit more responsibility, but Sean Livingston was like the unsung hero of that playoff series. And once he got back, they were back up and rolling against Portland. And again, like that kind of also goes to the teams that they were playing. Houston, I believe, was an 8 seed that year, and Portland was just a terrible matchup. The Warriors were a terrible matchup for Portland, and so they could kind of win. This was a crash course to Oklahoma City, and the Warriors were so head and shoulders above the rest of the league that they could kind of carry themselves without Steph for a couple of rounds, but they had to get him right for Oklahoma City.
Well, I want to make this point about Sean Livingston also because it speaks to like the larger composition of this team, which is Sean Livingston was the dude that never shot threes. Like Sean Livingston's game was to kill you at the elbow, right? Being a 6'7" backup point guard. Right, exactly, right? Because by now we've seen his knee fold over in front of the world. He was a feel-good element of his team, that this guy who came out of high school and we never got to see what it could have been, but he had such an important role on that squad. But the Steph injury becomes important. Look, they get to the Oklahoma City series, and what Oklahoma City did that I feel like a lot of teams were kind of afraid to do because the Warriors made them reactive is just go really big, right? Have Steven Adams and Enes Kanter out there at the same time. Enes Kanter can't guard anybody. That's the issue, but they don't have anybody that can guard him. And when they went up 3-1 in that series, the Warriors had home court advantage, but it wasn't a quirky 3-1, right? Like they were winning that series against the Warriors. Steph did not look like he did in the regular season. Of course, that was a part of it. But the Thunder were doing it in that series, and they had that chance. They had a chance to win it.
Yeah, like I said before, throughout the season, the Warriors swept the Thunder in that season series, but it wasn't an easy sweep by any means. You always knew that it was going to be Oklahoma City that they were going to play because just like I said, the matchups, they had everything that the Warriors did, but they were just bigger, right? Like if you just look at when you switch from, if you look at those first few games, when there was a switch of Steph Curry, if he switched from Steven Adams, he was going to get switched on to Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant, people look at him as one of the greatest offensive players, but when he wanted to, he was an elite defender, right? Because he can guard multiple positions and he could be a rim protector. And you saw every bit of that with Kevin Durant. And I went to a few games in that series and you could just see just them stifling, basically hobbled Steph. And Steph had to get his knee right. Even when we didn't talk about the Portland series, the guy back game, but he was pretty bad in that. He had to get his feet back up under him, and he probably rushed back from that knee injury because if you remember, that knocked him out of the Olympics, that injury. Yeah. And he had to rehabilitate for the next season. And you could kind of see just the weight of the season and everything going against them throughout that season, going for the championship, going for the record, all the hubris and the exhaustion that comes with just managing a team like this kind of fold onto them into that 3-1. And they had a real big hole to get out of. It was very assumed that we were going to see LeBron versus KD in the finals, which we were all great at as a basketball community. We were fine with that. But we were basically just assuming that it was going to be a 5-game series, and damn, we're going to get these jokes off.
Yeah, but see, this is my thing about that series that I think is important in talking about this team. So I've always said that this world has two kinds of people. People who think Scottie Pippen is overrated and people who think Scottie Pippen is underrated. I believe that the strongest Scottie Pippen criticism is there is no true Scottie Pippen game. You can maybe talk about Game 5 in the 91 finals, But the truth is, Michael Jordan's flu game should have been the Scottie Pippen game, but it wasn't because Mike got the goddamn Ebola, and he still got to come out here and do this because that's just not something you can ask Scottie Pippen to do, right? Yeah. Klay Thompson has Game 6 against Oklahoma City, right? Like that's where the legend of Game 6 Klay comes there. And look, it's crucial because they were losing that. Like this season was about to be over. It was all going to be for naught. And look, they got a helping hand for Russell Westbrook kind of shooting himself out of things. Like the Thunder did not hold their water in the opportunity to win that. But Klay Thompson did. Was it 37 in that game?
Yeah. Let me check real quick. Ryan, do your production magic on this, my guy. Let me just make sure I got this right.
I got you. 41, my fault. 41, Klay Thompson. 41.
41 in that game. But I think the thing was, if you look back at that game, and I remember watching it, and he was just keeping them afloat. Right, because I think they were down double digits in that game. I think that game was just a perfect amalgamation of the series, and you kind of see that in when you see playoff series, they typically go down to one game or one play, and that was that tells you everything about the series. And when that 3-1, when the Warriors went down 3-1, this is something that they typically do, right? I think that. A more recent example of what I'm about to describe is the 2022 finals, where Boston is pretty dominant against the Warriors for the first few games. And the Warriors, I think they go down 2-1, and that's before Steph goes on his crazy run and wins the series. But they kind of use those games as just like kind of a study period where they're like, okay, we're studying the team. And then once we figure it out, we're going to completely exploit it. You saw that against Memphis when they put Andrew Bogut against Tony Allen, and it completely changes the series. This one, what they saw in there in that 3-1, when they were down 3-1, is Russell Westbrook can be really erratic, especially when games are on the line. And they were like, okay, we can exploit that. As long as we stay close, we can beat these guys. And not only was Russ bad down the stretch, KD was bad as well. Like there was just he did not look in control. And I do want to, before we get back to Klay and how great he was during that, we haven't talked about this throughout this season. One of the other wrinkles of this was the ghost of Kevin Durant upon this season, where there is a assumption that there's an Adrian Wojnarowski story, I believe, that comes out in February or January, where it's basically
right around the All-Star break.
Around the All-Star break, where they're talking about how KD is just enamored with the Warriors, and there's going to be a pitch for him, and that's something to look out in the offseason. And you see all of that, and that also plays a part into this series, because like, what is KD going to do after this? No way, because we didn't have a precedent for somebody getting beat and then going to the team he got beaten by. But then that's also, you can see the weight on him during the backstretch of that Game 6, where he doesn't feel like he's in control necessarily of the game. And it's crazy because he's Kevin fucking Durant. He's one of the clutchest players of all time. But you see just the moment getting too big for Oklahoma City, and then you see the Warriors kind of just pulling one out of their ass. And it was Klay Thompson who balled out particularly and made the biggest shots, but it was Steph who played, like, I believe, if I remember correctly, did not play well in that first half and make timely shots down the stretch. And you see the poise that was coming out of them that wasn't there for Oklahoma City from their stars, because, I mean, there's plays where early in the shot clock, down, then they're up, the Thunder are, and Russ is just going full court. He's just throwing the ball out of bounds, right? Like and then KD is getting double teamed, and he's just throwing the ball out of bounds or taking shots that he wouldn't necessarily, take. It's a lot like what we're seeing right now with the Lakers Rockets series, where they're just doubling him and there's no recourse for it. But it was one of the defining games of Klay Thompson's career, and one of the defining games of that run thus far. And if they would have won that year, it would have probably been defining games of that NBA season.
Yeah, but look, the Warriors wound up winning that in Game 7, bringing it back to the house. Another bad Russell Westbrook game to close out that series. But
by the way, KD was pretty bad to end that series too. KD and Russ, if you look at their shooting numbers, were terrible during the back half of that series. Their shooting numbers were good, but their shooting numbers were shooting attempts were pretty bad.
Yeah, so like Game 7, Durant was 10 for 19 from the floor. Like he wasn't there. Russ, 7 for 21. Right?
7 for 21.
And this is on a team, you got to remember, that was starting self-check himself, Andre Robertson, who like they were playing 4-on-5 on offense. The thing was he was a monster
on
defender.
defense.
Maybe the greatest defender of all time to even justify the fact that he could get on the floor. If we're going to keep the buck, because
I feel bad for how his career ended, man. He had like a nasty knee injury. Like his career was never the same, but he was really good.
Yeah, because he couldn't shoot. Like he just all he could do was stuff that really required knees.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
Man, as somebody that has his own self check on the basketball floor, I empathize.
Hey, look, man. I mean, I'm doing this show. I ain't playing in the league. You know what I'm saying?
We got to be professionals at something, right?
We do. But no, this will set us up, man. We're going to talk later about these finals, and then we'll talk later in the summer about everything that came along with Kevin Durant coming to the Warriors. But Logan Murdock, check out Real Ones, available where all fine podcasts are given away for free. My brother, I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. And also Netflix. We got to get our Netflix numbers
That's right.
up. Make sure you check us out on Tuesday and Fridays, man. We out here, man. Me, Howard motherfucking Beck, and Raja Bell, man. We out here popping.
Howard motherfucking Beck. That is exactly what it says on his driver's license. Hey, man, and ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this 4 days a week. Brian Brumley handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, sir. Hit the voicemail line, 323-596-7767. Remember, follow The Right Time. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. We'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.